to end Russia's war in Ukraine are set to take place this week in Saudi Arabia. U.S. negotiators say recent meetings with Hamas representatives are being termed as helpful as talks focus on the release of American-Israeli hostages. And U.S. President Donald Trump holds talks at the White House with cryptocurrency leaders about his goals to build a reserve of Bitcoin. All this and much more coming up on today's Africa 54. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is heading for Jeddah, Saudi Arabia on Monday for U.S.-Ukraine talks as President Donald Trump pushes to broker a swift end to the Russia-Ukraine war. Rubio, America's top diplomat, will be joined by U.S. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz for the Jeddah talks with Ukrainian officials. The Ukrainian delegation is to be led by Andriy Yermak, President Volodymyr Zelensky's chief of staff. U.S. officials say the goal for Tuesday's talks is to reach a framework for a peace agreement and initial ceasefire. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is visiting Saudi Arabia Monday for a meeting with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman in Riyadh. Meanwhile, following his visit to Saudi Arabia, Secretary Rubio is slated to travel to Canada for the two-day G7 foreign ministers meeting that's set to begin on Wednesday. VOA's Veronica Balderas Iglesias has more on the talks to end the Russia-Ukraine war.
U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio traveled Sunday to Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, to hold talks with a Ukrainian delegation. The aim, according to an official statement, is to, quote, advance President Donald Trump's goal to end the Russia-Ukraine war. The visit comes days after Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky sent President Trump a conciliatory letter in the aftermath of a contentious meeting the leaders had at the White House on February 28. Trump commented Friday on the status of the peace negotiations.
I think we're doing very well with Russia. But right now they're bombing the hell out of Ukraine, and I'm finding it more difficult, frankly, to deal with Ukraine. And they don't have the cards.
As a form of pressure to get the parties to the negotiating table, Trump has paused military aid to Ukraine and intelligence sharing with Kyiv, while threatening to impose sanctions and tariffs on Russia. Securing a deal is important for Trump politically, analysts note.
He has bet, essentially, his presidency that some sort of deal will be obtained. And I don't know, there's so many moving players during these negotiations, whether it's Russia, Ukraine, the EU.
Stand with Ukraine. In the lead up to the U.S.-Ukrainian talks in Jeddah, which are expected to last until March 12, supporters of Ukraine rallied Saturday in Washington, while Ukrainian officials denounced a series of Russian attacks over the weekend against Ukrainian targets in Donetsk, among other regions. Veronica Balderas Iglesias, VOA News, Washington.
A Trump administration hostage negotiator calls his recent meetings with representatives of U.S.-designated terror group Hamas helpful. Discussions focused on the release of an American-Israeli hostage held by Hamas. Israel says it is planning to deploy a delegation this week to discuss ceasefire talks. VOA's Arash Arbasadi has more.
Thousands of protesters in Israel gathered outside the defense ministry in Tel Aviv this weekend. They demanded the Israeli government broker a hostage release deal with Hamas. In Washington last week, U.S. President Donald Trump confirmed his administration had, for the first time, held direct talks with Hamas, a departure from the long-standing U.S. policy not to negotiate with terrorists.
We are having discussions with Hamas. We are helping Israel in those discussions because we're talking about Israeli hostages. And we're not doing anything in terms of Hamas. We're not giving cash. In fact, I got 59 hostages out, and we gave nothing. In 59, we gave nothing.
Sunday morning, supporters and relatives of hostages awoke in tents outside the Israel Defense Ministry. Their message was clear. No new conflicts with Hamas, just secure a hostage release deal.
There are dozens of people that came with us to say the government don't get inside Gaza again, stop this war and bring all the hostages back home.
In recent days, a Trump administration negotiator met with Hamas to discuss a hostage release deal, calling the meeting very helpful.
I think something could come together within weeks. I will say that I believe there is enough there to make a deal between what Hamas wants and what they've accepted, and what Israel wants and it's accepted. And I think I think there is a deal where they can get all of the prisoners out, not just the Americans.
In the meantime, for Palestinians in Gaza's Khan Yunis, shortages of basic needs continue. Israel imposed a total blockade on all goods entering the enclave, including food, fuel, and medicine, until Hamas frees the remaining 59 hostages still held in Gaza. People here say they wait for hours to get bread as there's no longer electricity or firewood for cooking. Israel says it plans to send a delegation to Qatar on Monday to advance negotiations with Egyptian and Qatari mediators. Arash Arabasadi, VOA News.
President Trump convened cryptocurrency leaders at the White House to discuss digital assets and his goal to build a strategic reserve of Bitcoin. VOA's Michelle Quinn reports.
President Donald Trump welcomed to the White House leaders of the cryptocurrency industry to discuss the future of digital assets.
I know you worked, some of you, very long before people really understood what was happening. And so I congratulate you, but this is a big day.
The event signaled a dramatic shift in U.S. policy toward the cryptocurrency industry, whose major players have complained about the Biden administration's regulation and enforcement efforts. Trump made several crypto-related promises on the campaign trail last year, and the crypto industry spent millions of dollars toward his re-election and inauguration. His Securities and Exchange Commission has dismissed litigation against some cryptocurrency companies.
My administration also is working to end the federal bureaucracy's war on crypto, which was really going on pretty wildly during Biden.
And Trump signed an executive order to create a strategic Bitcoin reserve. The U.S. government confiscates Bitcoin, the world's most traded cryptocurrency, during criminal or civil asset forfeiture proceedings. Now, the government will hold that seized Bitcoin, not sell it, as has been done, Trump said. No taxpayer money will be used, he said. A majority of Americans are concerned about cryptocurrency's reliability and safety, according to a Pew Research Center survey in October. Critics say cryptocurrencies are risky for both consumers and financial systems. The Trump administration's creation of a Bitcoin reserve could help some investors gain more confidence in digital assets.
It's a step towards legitimizing cryptocurrencies. If the government holds it and holds on to it, I think that is a sign that these things are legitimate to purchase.
The U.S. needs to be a leader in the cryptocurrency markets, some observers say.
We have created, in effect, a parallel second financial system to the fiat currency system. And so it's in the United States citizens' interests to be able to, for the United States to play on that playing field, lest it wants to lose financial power.
The first step for the Bitcoin reserve will be to review how much Bitcoin the U.S. government actually holds. White House officials estimate the government has about 200,000 Bitcoins, roughly worth $17 billion. Michelle Quinn, VOA News.
The concluded 10th annual Powering Africa Energy Summit in Washington has given American companies as well as African state power investors a first look into how the Trump administration plans to do business with the continent in regards to electricity. The U.S. Secretary of Energy, Chris Wright, details how he would like to engage with Africa over the next 4 years.
The only goal of energy is to expand human opportunity, to make us live longer, healthier, more opportunities for us and our kids, to increase food security, increased heating security. Like it's foundational, and I know everyone here already knows that. So to me, what we want to talk about is what are the answers that Africans desire? What is the direction, your resources, your best choices there? And how can we partner with you? I loved Adam's words. We're not here to tell you what to do or direct you. We want to partner with African countries. And how can we enable you to build a better energy system and better lives for your people? If you measure energy by any other metric than how is it bettering the lives of the people that live there, you're off track. You're off track. Climate change is a real thing, but to put it not only on par with human lives, but superior to human lives. Look, I'll tell you, this administration will not do that. We will be the most climate knowledgeable administration we've had because we actually look at numbers and data and science and economics and trade-offs. But are we going to continue the days of climate change is more important than human lives and human opportunity? Absolutely not.
That was Chris Wright, the U.S. Secretary of Energy. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, President Felix Tshisekedi is accusing former President Joseph Kabila of sponsoring rebels. On Monday, officials from former President Kabila's party were asked to appear before a military prosecutor. For more on what's happening in Congo, I'm joined in studio by Hubert Kabasu Babu Katulondi, former governor of Kasai Province. Mr. Katulondi, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you very much.
Now, how would you describe the current situation in the Democratic Republic of Congo?
It is very complex, very chaotic, but solutions are possible. Unfortunately, we have a situation where the current ruling regime, which is considered as being, or portrayed rather, by its adversaries as being an illegitimate regime stemming from fraudulent elections. And you have got the self-proclaimed armed opposition that is fighting the regime, and you have also the civil society, but also opposition that also considers that it is an illegitimate regime, and there are pressures and options for talks so that peace can prevail and stability prevail in the DRC.
I wonder why they would call President Tshisekedi's leadership illegitimate. I think that we watched the elections take place. We've seen a couple of issues happening. Congo has had a lot of rough times, not just during Tshisekedi's time. But then again, we mentioned former President Joseph Kabila's allies being asked to appear before a prosecutor. First of all, do we know why they had to appear before a prosecutor?
Exactly, because the Tshisekedi regime accuses not only Tshisekedi has repeated it over time that Mr. Kabila is sponsoring or is related, is an associate of M23 or IFC M23. And Minister of Transportation Jean-Pierre Bemba also accused Kabila of promoting the rebels. That's why Mr. Kabila's party, its members, have been invited by the military prosecutor. However, there's a contradiction there because Kabila is the one who arrested the officials, political and military officials, generals of M23. He arrested them. Some of them were even being prosecuted. It's when Mr. Tshisekedi arrived in power in 2019 that he canceled the prosecutions, even released from prisons the very generals who are in M23 right now.
Now, Hubert, unfortunately, we do not have somebody on the other side who can tell us what exactly is happening on the president's side, so we can have a balanced report here. But if you look at your country, what is the cost of the recent chaos by the M23 rebels that was said to be backed by Rwanda, which Rwanda has said it has nothing to do with? What is the cost if you look at the country and the mess that happened just about 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, it's costly. It is bloodshed, destruction of infrastructure, and in terms of the economy, it's a very productive area with agriculture, a lot of minerals. One of the largest deposits of coltan, Rubaya, is under rebels' control right now. However, the ultimate solution is the dialogue. It talks, because this context here is less complex than the context under Joseph Kabila in 2001, 2002, when we had another dialogue in Sun City, because then we didn't have a constitution, we didn't have an institution. Now, Mr. Tshisekedi is in a context where he's got an advantage. We have a constitution, we have institutions. It's just a matter of people sitting around the table, talking, to just go back to the constitutional democracy. That's the main issue, the violation of the Constitution.
And when you talk about sitting on the table, who would be involved in this conversation? The president, president's people, those rebels, who is supposed to be involved, and really can Congo restore its glory. You know, the past glory of being stable, a country that has minerals, it has all kinds of good stuff that we don't get in so many of the African countries.
Valid, pertinent, salient point. We have all necessary resources, even human resources, to propel the country to a stage of accelerated development. And right now, it will be like in 2002, 2001, when we had even bigger, much stronger rebel organizations like RCD Goma, MLC, and other. We had many rebel groups, and it was a very complex situation where it was actually portrayed as the African World War, where we had 9 armies of different African countries involved. But we were able to solve that situation. We can solve this situation here. Mr. Tshisekedi's regime, his delegates, IFC M23, Mr. Nanga and Mr. Makenga, Mr. Kabila, Mr. Moise Katumbi, all these people, it's an inclusive dialogue to find a common solution.
Right. We're going to have to leave it there for today. Thank you so much, Mr. Katulondi. Hubert Kabasu Babu Katulondi is former governor of Kasai Province in the Democratic Republic of Congo. We're excited to hear what you think about Africa 54 and all our VOA Africa programs on our website at voaafrica.com. Still to come, we'll update you on the conflict in Syria. We'll be right back. In other news, the U.S. State Department is ordering all non-emergency government personnel to leave South Sudan's capital as tension escalates because of fighting in the north. The travel advisory issued on Sunday states that fighting is ongoing and that, quote, weapons are readily available to the population. Female activists raised their voices at the United Nations as they marked International Women's Day Friday amid a global trend of backsliding on hard-won rights. Sima Bahu, Executive Director of UN Women, said, quote, more than ever, the call of gender equality has never been more urgent, nor the obstacles in our way more apparent, but our determination has never been more unshakable. And Athol Thugad, South Africa's foremost playwright who explored the pervasiveness of apartheid in works such as The Blood Knot and Master Harrod, has died at 92. His best-known works center on the suffering caused by the apartheid policies of South Africa's white minority government. 6 of his plays landed on Broadway, and he appeared in the films The Killing Fields and Gandhi. Since the Syrian civil war mostly ended in December, fighting has continued outside the city of Manbiji, where car bombs have killed dozens. As VOA's Heather Murdoch reports, locals say their city will never have rest.
Fariel Suleiman has lived in a village near Manbij, Syria, all her life. And during the last 14 years of war, it has been a perpetual front line. Hospitals here barely function, and she says it's too dangerous to send her children to school.
The girls were playing ball at the school and it went on the roof. They went to get it and they found a cluster bomb. They started playing with the balls, and when they threw one, it exploded. 2 were killed and 3 were injured.
Suleiman comes here to the city's only working hospital to get treatment for her children. But doctors say they pay out of pocket to run the generators, which they cannot do for much longer. And without electricity, they cannot help patients, officials say. even though this is the only facility serving about 1.5 million people.
Nobody cares. Manbij is a forgotten city. They don't know where we stand, and it is why there is no support.
Warring parties in Syria, however, care deeply about this strategic city. When the Syrian civil war began in 2011, Manbij was controlled by the government of fallen President Bashar al-Assad. Then it was taken by Islamic State militants. Kurdish forces took it next, building a network of tunnels to connect buildings and store weapons. In late 2024, rebel forces took most of Syria from the regime and Manbij from the Kurds. Yet fighting continues here over control of a key dam outside the city, and car bombs have killed dozens of civilians in recent months, according to the local government. As the conflict goes on, the impoverished and isolated region becomes more and more unstable, says Abdel El-Monem Al-Mustafa, who heads the city's Civil Society Council.
After 2 weeks, there may be no bread here, but I don't have the capacity to bring bread for 1 million people. We are individuals here, not NGOs or associations.
He says he hopes Syria can unite under one army soon. But Kurdish forces see the Turkish-backed Syrian military holding Manbij as an existential threat. And with U.S. backing, the Kurds also bear a responsibility in their region that no one else wants: tens of thousands of Islamic State prisoners. And while militaries and politicians try to untangle this mess, locals here say to them, the war is not close to ending.
Manbij will never have rest. There will be no rest in Manbij.
As is common in Manbij, she doesn't say who she wants to win, because around here, you never know who will be in charge next. Heather Murdoch, VOA News, Manbij, Syria.
European defense firms looking to profit from European Union investment in rearming as the bloc reacts to the possibility of a U.S. pivot away from Europe's security under President Trump. But as Henry Ridgwell reports, the $860 billion rearm Europe plan faces opposition from member states Hungary and Slovakia.
Several European defence stocks have recorded double-digit gains in recent weeks, bucking the general nervousness in global markets over a potential trade war. Europe is pushing to boost its defences after Washington indicated that European security would no longer be a priority.
The stock market has also realized that Europe is more on its own and has to defend itself accordingly, and that the USA has taken a back seat as a reliable partner.
US President Donald Trump has long called for Europe to spend more on its own defence, arguing that Washington should no longer foot the bill. Meeting in Brussels Thursday, European Union leaders, alongside Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, discussed an $860 billion rearm Europe plan, funded by EU bonds and relaxed rules on borrowing and spending.
The money is less of an issue than the result. We saw after Corona, after COVID, that Europe and the EU quickly were able to mobilize hundreds of billions of euros.
Nation states are also ramping up defence spending. Friedrich Merz, expected to be Germany's next chancellor, pledged to relax the nation's strict borrowing rules.
I want to be very clear here. Whatever it takes must also go for our defence now, in view of the threats to our freedom and to peace on our continent.
The Trump administration's decision to halt military aid to Ukraine and restrict the use of some American-made weapons has underscored Europe's desire to build up its own capabilities.
It's important that the money we spend at least stays in Europe. We shouldn't be buying American weapon systems with it.
European leaders have also pledged to continue supporting Ukraine. But can Europe rearm itself and keep supplying Ukraine?
You do not build a defence industrial complex overnight. This is not something which is going to suddenly manifest itself, and certainly will have no direct impact on the Ukraine war.
Not all Europeans are on board. Hungary and Slovakia have voiced opposition to continuing support for Ukraine.
The continuation of the war is wrong. dangerous and a mistake.
Outside the EU summit, protesters demanded that Europe seize the $200 billion in Russian assets frozen in European banks and use the money to defend Ukraine. Henry Ridgwell, VOA News.
Traditional Korean moon jars and modern takes on the elegant white vases are the focus of a new art exhibit in the western U.S. state of Colorado. VOA correspondent Scott Stearns has the story from Denver.
The new show at the Denver Art Museum celebrates Korean moon jars, the elegant white vessels that flourished in the 17th and 18th centuries. It's a collaboration with the National Museum of Korea, showcasing the still mysterious globes and the art they inspire.
For contemporary artists, moon jars provide a lot of inspiration because of their mystery. We don't know what they were used for or why they were produced for such a short period.
The show juxtaposes 18th century ceramics with 21st century takes on those traditional jars in what Denver Art Museum curator Hong Jeon Kim Han says reflects the connection between past and present.
I wanted people to reflect and meditate what happened in the past, but also what's around us.
The jars are formed in two halves and joined imperfectly. Painter Young-Jun P. Lu says the moon jar's imperfections are their attraction.
Being asymmetrical is more perfect for me because when you see things in nature, not everything is symmetrical. Those imperfections give more freedom to flow with nature and the things around us.
Among the contemporary works is a resin and fiberglass jar from designer Min Jae Kim. He says moon jars' asymmetries make them more relatable.
There's this kind of built-in layer of imperfection that is admired and, in a way, trained or practiced. There's no measurable point of completion or perfection. I know that if I go further than this, you would actually have harder time connecting or communicating with a piece because it's too perfect.
Lu says moon jars remain central to Korean identity hundreds of years after they first appeared.
Moon jars embody Korean spirit. It holds all these people's thoughts and spirits in one jar, and that is why it still speaks to Koreans today.
The show has 12 moon jars on display, one for each month of the lunar calendar, as well as paintings and artwork in other media. Scott Stearns, VOA News, Denver.
And that's our show for today. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Have a great evening.